In my first semester of college, I experienced stalking. The man was in the same class as me. After class on the second or third week, we struck up a conversation and discovered that we resided in different dorms inside the same complex. The dorms had changed into towers with 17 floors and about 35 rooms on each floor. Huge structures. He and his flatmate suddenly appear at my door, but I never revealed which floor I resided on. He had to search every floor to find me. Then, when my flatmate and I are working on something, he enters my room and lies on the floor. Finally, his friend informs him that he is acting strangely and that they ought to leave, then he simply began to sit outside of my dorm room. He would always be there when I got back from class, simply waiting. Why wouldn't I give him a chance? He would write notes and ask me to read his essay for class and to chat with him, then he began sending me ominous song over MySpace. About how he planned to set the dorm on fire to force me to vacate my room. I printed those out and enlisted the help of my English instructor. She involved her boss in the situation. My teacher started to accompany me as we crossed the campus to get to my next class. He kept up with us the entire time, even when we took side trips for coffee. Last but not least, the teacher asked us to compose an ode to our favorite study spot. Kind of strange, but whatever. He even included my room number and other details that might be used to identify me in his writing about how he felt powerful when standing outside my door and how I was locked inside, along with the song lyrics, that was ultimately turned over to the university, and there was a hearing at which my flatmate, I, and other people had to make statements. He wasn't at the school the next semester, but regrettably, they never told me what had happened. The next year, his roommate happened to be in one of my classes. The very first day he comes up to me and says that there are no hard feelings for what you did to my friend. A delivery man who was leaving a box at my place of employment tried to follow me home. He was in the hallway when I passed him. He simply gave me the creeps and seemed weird or off. When I arrived at my car, he had already left his spot and was making his way down the driveway towards the street. He turned right. So I swung left. He started doing a U-turn as I quickly checked my rearview mirror. At that moment, I was on edge, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I decided to go ahead with my plans to stop at the shop. He pursued me for 3 miles. He parked facing me on the opposite side of the road from where I was waiting. This only served to reinforce his stalking me. I knew there were numerous security cameras at this Walmart because I was extremely familiar with them. He waited in his car, so I stepped inside. I hurried to the manager's desk after entering and informed them of the situation. This crazy guy enters the store in search of me as I'm speaking. When I was hiding next to the manager, he assumed mistakenly that I had gone down the main aisle on that side. I was escorted to my car by the manager's staff member. Fortunately, a policeman had just stopped someone 2 rows away. I made a quick trip there in my car. I witnessed the crazed guy exit the business as I waited for the police officer's assistance. When he didn't see my car, he stopped looking for me and left. Just my words were written down by the officer. I reported the event in the morning. After it was raised, the HSE director, Health, Safety, and Environment, visited me. He discovered that the delivery company's proprietors were people he knew and that the men in question had a serious drug problem and a long criminal history. I never saw the crazy guy again after he was removed from his route. Additionally, the HSE ordered the local police force to dispatch a cop to record a statement. I received safety advice in case it happened again. I didn't feel much comfort after the officer suggested that perhaps the men didn't know how else to grab my attention. What in the world is that like? We never spoke. Another month later, I was still required to labor at that remote job site adjacent to the woods. Being by yourself in that building late at night after everyone had left was spooky when leaving by yourself at night. Sometimes, I'd work until 11 p.m. Oh, unfortunately, remote work was not an option back then. I used to take my children to get their hair cut. A pickup vehicle emerged from the fire station as I passed it on the road. On the side, I believe it stated, "Fire Chief." My son informed me as I was walking down a crowded street, "Hey Mom, that fireman is looking at you." He was there, sure enough, when I turned around. He was also very attractive. Being a single mother who appears rather exhausted, I was quite happy with this. It was pleasant to have a handsome man looking at me. My children kept repeating, "Mom, he's still looking at you," while I turned my head away. He then pulled away from me. I didn't give it much thought. After that, both he and I turned onto a side street. I was still unconcerned. Then, when I turned onto another side street, I was a little startled to see him follow. But who knows? On the block, there was a Canadian Tire, so perhaps he was going there. However, I then turned into the mini-mall where the barbershop was located. The only other businesses there were a laser tag, an aquarium, and a juice business. He too made a pull-in. In front of the barbershop, we parked. He left his vehicle across the space. A tiny part of me believed that he was going to approach me. The more sensible half of me, though, said, "No way, this guy is a total freak." He exited his truck as we entered the hair salon. He stood staring at us. He then dialed his mobile and started conversing while still glaring at us. As my children had their hair trimmed, I could keep an eye on him. He eventually got back into his truck, but he sat behind the wheel and never looked away from the salon. When we went outside, he started his truck. While backing up and indicating a left turn, I suddenly made a right turn. He turned left, and I hurried out of that neighborhood, taking as many strange turns as I could. I took my kids out to lunch in a completely different part of town instead of returning home. The entire way home, I kept an eye out. Although I lived a few blocks from that fire station, I never again traveled down that route. Anyhow, it was a somewhat unusual route that I didn't usually take, and no, I didn't call and voice my displeasure. I might have contacted the police if he had approached me or said something strange, but at that point, I already had my irate ex-husband on an EPO, and I simply couldn't handle any more drama. But yeah, very strange. If I had perhaps approached him or flirted with him, things might have turned out pretty poorly. He was standing and gazing at the hair salon with a rigidity that reminded me of someone who might have anger management issues, I could tell. So bizarre. Thank you again for joining us for another video. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, and comment down below and let us know what you would like to hear in the near future. See you all again soon.